All right, we're gonna go over my modifications to the Saka knee ascender to make it fixed on my left leg and allow it to what I'm calling soft float when you step into it so it does not lock your knee to the same line as the rope. So I chose the Saka for this because of its very straight back piece. It's just a very flat ascender. So I bought it because I liked it and intended to use it as it was designed, but of course with everything I do, I have to go tweaking with it. Drilling holes, cutting things, sewing things, gluing things, buying things, and making it better than it ever has been. So at its basic fundamental usage, it is just a strap that you can clip into your boot. And if we look up top here, you can see where I guess it's all how the magic happens here. So this blue strap just bought on Amazon is what attaches to right below my knee. I'm going to take that off right now and set it on the side. And you can see I still utilize the bungee cord, and that captures this strap on my knee. And I'll put it on after I show the close-ups. But when I step in it, it allows this to flex off the knee some and then return. So for right now, though, the important thing is this bungee cord is still utilized. Where this strap is to capture this DMM little micro locking carabiner, I forget what it's called, the XSRE or something. This strap that's on the tube sleeve is one of the things that I custom hacked and made. So I cut the original one off the bottom of the ascender, restitched it, and there's a gap here between the stitching that's specifically for the size of this carabiner. And through trials and tribulations, I realized that you have to use some form of locking link. So you could use a small screw link or this locking little carabiner here. I do like the carabiner, even though it's kind of expensive for what it's doing. It does have that auto locking if you want to, for instance, open it up. You can undo this capture, and now essentially it's identical to what its original design was meant to do. So I'll show that when I put it on. I wasn't sure if any of this was going to work, so I didn't want to totally destroy this thing. But yeah, so that ended up working out pretty well. On the back of this, you can see the original bolt that was part of the Saka. And that bolt normally would go into a hole that was kind of fishtail cut, I guess, on one end of the tube sleeve. So I stitched that closed for rigidity, flipped the tube sleeve around because I needed some dimension to make that more of a solid connection. And that's what I did. So this used to be the bottom of the tube sleeve. I drilled a hole, heated up like a punch so I could melt the fibers in the middle of the sleeve so they wouldn't continue fraying, and put that bolt back in. The Saka also has an original hole down here that I guess is from previous designs that ended up just not getting utilized. And I ended up finding, they call these Chicago bolts. They're like temporary rivets, I guess. I got these on Amazon, and these worked really well for how the rest of these things are attached. So a little kit for 10 bucks came with multiple lengths, and it's flat, which is kind of the key, flat on both sides. So you can see I put one of those in that bottom hole, and it won't interfere with the rope running through that. So glued and stitched this strap all the way down to the bottom of the tube sleeve, still utilizing the bungee cord. Yeah, I also bought a different, I think it's 5/8 webbing, this piece right here, from a strap store, and that way I could custom make my length. And then I'm using the original buckle from the Saka to just make a little eye in the end of it. And through that eye, I just have a cam strap. So the buckle on the cam is spring loaded and it just feeds through. So I'm gonna put this on my leg and it's gonna go on like a stirrup setup. So no longer am I gonna clip to at the top of my boot or to something that's on my boot. This red nylon runner that I cut to length is just sort of a chafe sleeve on the bottom, and it's gonna sit like this. So I'm gonna put this on the ground, and let's see if we can see this. So I'm just gonna put this on right now. Normally this stays on the device. I guess I put that on backwards. And then I don't have to mess with it. So I like this one. I got it on Amazon. It's got a big profile to it. So what I'll do is when I get to the job, I just set this on the ground and I step in it so that the bottom of the tube sleeve is right at the ground, and I just suck it in tight. And you'll also notice that there's this piece of plastic, HDPE, whatever. I got it on Amazon as well, sheets of 5 of these things for like a few bucks. And I just cut it to the length I needed with like a plexiglass cutter. And I need that rigidity, it turns out. And it's got one more bolt down here, the one up here, and then the original top bolt on the Saka. And I'll show you why I had to put that on in a minute. But you'll notice that it stops. It doesn't go all the way to the full length of the tube sleeve. It stops, probably about 10 inches or so down from the top. And it's a very specific spot where I cut it off. So I'll put this on. You can see that. Now, step back a little bit. This piece will just tuck in through here, like that. I'll put it through here, bring the bungee around, capture it, and then lock the carabiner. So now that's trapped in there, and it's holding it against my leg. The spring buckle, I'm going to I used to overcomplicate this and do wraps and things like that, but it turned out to be extremely simple. Just go around my ankle, feed that through the cam, and pull it tight. All right, so I can suck that as tight as I want. That black piece of plastic on the back stops right about here. It's got to stop above this strap so that as this flexes out, it isn't going to rip that little rivet screw out, which you could use rivets if you wanted to, but I was making all kinds of adjustments, so these were removable. They're Loctited in now, so they're good. They're not going to come out. But I used to have it go all the way down to the bottom, but that was too restrictive of this type of movement, right? So you can see where this is the soft float, as I'm referring to it, where I can step down on my rope, and if my knee drifts out of place, it's okay, right? But I need the added rigidity of that plastic, so when I go to bring my foot up, this doesn't bow out and go down like that, which is what was happening. So with that added bit of high-density, durable plastic in there, I'm able to move my foot up and down with whatever bit of resistance the rope has, and it's going to keep this from tacoing out, right? So efficiency of that energy transfer. So I'll take the tail of this, and I'll just like I do with my foot ascender on my other leg, I'll tuck it in and just bring it around the back. Kind of like a half-ass timber hitch sort of deal, and that keeps it locked in. So even if this buckle gets bumped while I'm climbing, it doesn't just undo everything. So this was just some old strap I had lying around. I could probably cut the tail shorter. But you can see the tube sleeve is still kind of doing its thing, and you can adjust the bungee cord resistance based on where you put your stopper knot. And then I cut the excess off and just left the little tail. But you can see I got it set up like a stirrup, so it feels the same way loaded as my right foot ascender does, where it's kind of on the inside of the boot there. And you can see the straps, it's just below my knee. I have total, you know, range of motion, things like that. There's really nothing to get into the way. And if I want to, for some reason, have this function sort of normally, I can pop this off in the middle of the climb, take that out, and pull the carabiner. And now you could put this to your bridge or to a chest, wherever it would reach, really. And now this is still just like floating out in space the way a traditional knee ascender works. And yeah, you have the tube sleeve and everything, but if you're going to do a longer ascent and you want a little bit more freedom of your leg, you set it up like that. And then the stowage part of it is you get back up, you get to the top of the tree, you tuck that in, and you can just put that right through that pocket. Bungee cord around the back, pop it in, screw it down, and then that just sits in there like that. And now we're back to being able to use it mid-work, you know, positioning, whatever, for those short internal canopy ascents and whatnot. And it just hangs out there. And that's what I like about it. I didn't want to store something on my harness. I didn't want to throw something down to the ground because I know I'm going to end up using this thing again at some point. And if I don't have it on, I'm likely to just sort of, knowing me, like muscle and manhandle my way through whatever short ascent in the canopy I have to do. And as much as I like to think I'm good at planning my routes, we all know that that's not always the case. So I like just having it on and available and accessible whenever I want. The Ascender, again, the Saka was prime for this because of how flat it's just straight. You look at a lot of the other ones and there's some like curve to the top or some curve to the bottom to be meant as a chest ascender. But this was designed as a knee ascender, and I really, really just like how smooth and flat that is. I tried so many different variations of this, but this is the one that is working the smoothest. So all these things that I bought outside of the Saka are like Amazon purchases, basically. The black plastic, the webbing strap, the little Chicago screws, a few bucks for that. And I did put some just hockey tape down here to cover up where I did some stitching. The stitching I used, the twine I used for lock stitching splices. So I have a ton of that lying around, and it just seems to work. It doesn't loosen up. And like I said, if you want to use this as a traditional floating knee ascender for some 75-foot ascents, or maybe for competition or something, you can easily take all this off. All right, pull your strap out. There. And down here at the bottom, this gray webbing just goes through an eye. So if I took that out, this length is still totally adjustable through this buckle. You can put a carabiner on there and then clip it to the top of your boot or whatever stirrup strap you have, and then you still have this thing as your normally functioning tube sleeve. So come back up top here. So that's how I kind of set that up, and it's worked really well. And I actually don't use it in this configuration. It always stays as a fixed to my knee sort of thing. So I was trying to come up with some cool acronym for it, you know, SAKA, self-advancing knee ascender. We'll call this one the FLAKA, fixed leg advancing knee ascender. That makes me think of the rapper Waka Flocka Flame for some dumb reason. So I always said if I was going to do a podcast or a YouTube channel, it'd be called Fartin' Around with Phil. So I guess this would be a great first episode to something I'm probably never going to follow up on, because there was a ton of farting around to get this thing to this case. But thanks to COVID and all that time off we had, I think I spent my energy on a worthy endeavor. So through this process, I did learn how to make the tube sleeve myself, so I made a couple other versions that I'll post pictures for. but everything is holding up really well. One of the critical measurements on there, and I guess I just got lucky, I'm 5'6", but the length of the tube sleeve is important. It's got to go from the ground basically to the height it needs to be right below your knee. So if you're tall and lanky, the original included tube sleeve with the Saka is probably going to be too short, or you'll just try to make it work and it's not going to be as fluid as it could be. But like I said, with some chafe sleeve and some vinyl tubing and a little bit of ingenuity in how to glue those tubes internally to it, you'll be able to make one your own length. And then I do like the Dyneema solid core bungee that comes with the Saka because it's very slick and slippery on that Dyneema. So when you do step off from your leg, there's a sharp angle that gets made here, and it does return pretty well into the tube. Versus, like I tried using that elastic shock cord that comes with the tree motions for the gear loops, and that seemed that as you stretched it out, it wouldn't exactly return in, and it would just kind of like add a bunch of slack into this captured piece here. So something to keep in mind if you're deciding on materials, if this is something you want to mess with. But you know, I really enjoy it. It works for me. Like I said, it's not something I think could be easily marketed as like a version you can buy, just because you know, how customized the positioning needs to be on these things. But it's really simple, I guess, and the biggest advancement would be it needs to be rigid and it needs to float off the knee. It doesn't need to, but it works a lot better having some way to have that happen. My initial design was the gap between these two screws. I put the strap through there and had it just hard locked to my leg, and that was just too much. I did not like how it restricted my knee movement. So, and I do like how Richard sells this bungee cord by itself, so you don't need to commit to buying the whole Saka, even though I do think this Ascender works the best for this. So that's it. I'll post some pictures just so it's like up close and personal, but that is my version of the FLAKA. Thanks.